On the morning of November 14th, 1897, in the basement of City Hall in Lower Manhattan, a junior building inspector named Thomas Brennan opened a requisition ledger that should have contained routine foundation permits. The air smelled of damp plaster and coal dust. Outside, rain drummed against narrow windows set high in the brick walls. Inside, beneath the flicker of gas lamps, Brennan found something that contradicted the official construction timeline by nearly 2 years. The ledger listed vault light installations for buildings that, according to municipal records, had not yet broken ground. In faded ink, someone had written delivery orders for thousands of glass prisms, not for sidewalks, but for what the document called subterranean illumination systems. A penciled note in the margin read, "Foundry capacity, insufficient. Delay fabrication pending coal supply." The dates had been crossed out and rewritten, twice. The vault lights appeared first not as decorative elements, but as solutions to a problem that few official documents acknowledged directly. In the 1880s, as Manhattan buildings climbed higher and lots grew narrower, the spaces beneath sidewalks expanded into networks of storage vaults, workshops, and service corridors. Building owners paid the city for the right to extend their basements beyond their property lines, creating rooms that existed entirely under public walkways. Workers spent entire shifts in these spaces: laundries, printshops, coal storage, wine cellars, places where no natural light could reach. Electric lighting remained prohibitively expensive. Gas lamps posed fire risks in confined spaces. The solution emerged from glassworks in Brooklyn and Newark. Thick glass prisms, cast in iron frames, set flush with the sidewalk surface above. The prisms themselves were technological objects disguised as architectural details. Each piece of glass, typically 4 inches square, though sizes varied, was molded with geometric facets on its lower surface. Light entering from above would strike these angled surfaces and refract downward at precise angles, scattering illumination across basement ceilings rather than traveling straight down in narrow beams. A worker standing 15 feet from the nearest vault light would still have enough diffused light to read by. To sort laundry. To inspect wine bottles for sediment, time equals 500 milliseconds. The engineering was elegant. No moving parts, no fuel consumption, no maintenance beyond occasional cleaning. Yet, the official permits rarely mentioned illumination. Instead, they described the prisms as pavement reinforcement, or vault covers. The language suggested structural necessity rather than human comfort. By March of 1902, in a third-floor office overlooking Broadway, a patent clerk named Samuel Yelling reviewed an application that troubled him enough to write a marginal query that still survives in the archived file. The patent, submitted by Consolidated Vault Light Company, claimed a new prism geometry that would increase subsurface visibility by 43% compared to existing designs. Yellen's note, written in pencil, asked, "For what purpose does increased visibility serve if vaults are, as stated, in building codes, used only for storage of non-perishable goods?" No answer appears in the file. The patent was approved 6 weeks later. By that time, vault lights had spread to Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Chicago. In each city, the pattern repeated. Official records emphasized structural integrity, while the glass itself was engineered for human vision. The prisms became ubiquitous precisely because they solved a problem that existed in the gap between labor law and building economics. Workers spent 10, 12, 14 hours beneath the sidewalks, yet no regulation required their employers to provide natural light. The vault lights appeared in permit applications as incidental features of foundation work, not as workplace improvements. This allowed building owners to install them without acknowledging that human beings would spend their working lives depending on that light. In a photograph from 1905, taken inside a basement laundry on Bleecker Street, women stand at washing stations beneath a ceiling that glows with dozens of circular light patches, each one a prism directly above, casting its refracted illumination downward. The photograph's caption identifies the location and date, but makes no mention of the light source. The women's faces are visible only because of the vault lights, yet the lights themselves are treated as invisible infrastructure. The glass had to withstand extraordinary forces. A single prism might bear the weight of pedestrians, push carts, delivery wagons, and later, automobiles, all while remaining transparent enough to transmit useful quantities of light. Manufacturers developed formulas using cullet glass mixed with sand, soda ash, and lime, then cast the molten mixture in iron molds that created the prismatic patterns. The cooling process had to be controlled precisely. Too fast, and the glass would develop internal stresses that could cause catastrophic failure under load. Too slow, and production costs became prohibitive. In a foundry ledger from Corning Glass Works, dated April 1903, quality control notes indicate that approximately 18% of vault light castings failed inspection. The rejected pieces were remelted. The approved pieces were shipped to cities where they would be set in sidewalks and forgotten. On September 8, 1911, in the aftermath of the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire, building inspectors across New York began reviewing basement workspaces with new attention. The Triangle fire had occurred in upper floors, but the investigation revealed broader patterns of workplace conditions that had been systematically ignored. In basement inspections that autumn, officials documented hundreds of spaces where workers operated in near darkness, where a single gas lamp provided the only light for a dozen people, where eye strain and accidents were common but unreported. The vault lights, where they existed, appeared in these reports as incidental observations, premises illuminated by pavement prisms, rather than as safety features that should have been required. No new regulations emerged. The inspections noted conditions but mandated no changes. Time equals 750 milliseconds, yet the vault lights continued to multiply. By 1915, engineering journals began publishing technical analyses of their optical properties, treating them as subjects worthy of scientific study. An article in Engineering News Record, dated June 17, 1915, included diagrams showing light ray paths through various prism geometries, calculations of illumination intensity at different depths, and comparisons of glass compositions and their transparency characteristics. The article discussed vault lights purely as engineering challenges: how to maximize light transmission, how to prevent water infiltration, how to maintain structural integrity over decades. It made no reference to the human beings who depended on that light, as if the prisms existed in a purely technical realm, divorced from questions of labor or welfare. In a different archive, in a different city, contradictory evidence survives. The Philadelphia Building Trades Council, in meeting minutes from October 1912, recorded a discussion about vault lights that framed them explicitly as worker safety equipment. A union representative named Michael Cosgrave argued that building owners should be required to install vault lights anywhere workers spent more than 4 hours per day in basement spaces. His proposal was defeated, but the debate itself reveals that workers understood the prisms as essential infrastructure, even when building codes and permit applications treated them as optional decorative elements. The disconnect persisted. Those who worked beneath the glass knew its purpose, while those who regulated buildings described that purpose only obliquely. The installation process required precision that official specifications rarely acknowledged. Workers would cut openings in sidewalk concrete, set iron frames level with the surface, then lower individual glass prisms into place. Each prism rested on a bed of tar or mastic to prevent water infiltration and to cushion against the constant vibration of street traffic. The frames themselves, cast iron, later steel, had to be anchored securely enough to prevent shifting, yet designed to allow replacement of broken prisms without excavating the entire sidewalk. In blueprint archives, installation drawings show complex details: drainage channels, expansion joints, reinforcing ribs. What the drawings omit is any indication of what lies below the rooms these lights were meant to illuminate, the people who would work there, the hours they would spend looking up at circles of refracted daylight. By the winter of 1923, in Chicago, a building collapse on Randolph Street exposed a vault space that extended 40 feet beyond the building's legal property line. The collapse occurred during street repair work. A steam shovel broke through what workers assumed was solid fill and instead found empty space beneath. Newspaper accounts described the illegal vault, the unsafe excavation, the negligence of the building owner. They mentioned, almost in passing, that the vault ceiling was studded with prisms set in the sidewalk above, prisms that had been providing light to an unauthorized workspace for more than 15 years. The city condemned the building and filled the vault with concrete. No investigation asked how many similar spaces existed elsewhere or how many workers had labored in them. or what role the vault lights had played in making those spaces usable. The Great Depression altered the economics of basement workspaces, but not the fundamental pattern. As manufacturing moved out of city centers and wages collapsed, many vault spaces were abandoned or converted to storage. The prisms remained, now illuminating empty rooms or spaces piled with forgotten inventory. In photographs from the 1930s, vault lights appear as regular patterns in sidewalks, circles of glass every 8 or 10 feet, creating rhythmic sequences that suggest some underlying order. Yet many of the rooms below stood empty. The infrastructure outlasted its original purpose. The glass continued to gather light and send it downward to spaces where no one worked, no one looked, no one remembered why the lights had been installed. During World War II, some vault spaces found new uses. Civil defense preparations identified basement areas beneath thick sidewalks as potential shelter spaces during air raids. The vault lights, designed to provide working illumination, would have been liabilities during blackout conditions. Circular skylights visible from above, marking the locations of people sheltering below. In some cities, vault lights were covered with tar paper or painted black. In others, they were simply left alone, since air raids on American cities remained hypothetical threats. After the war, the coverings remained in place for years, and eventually people forgot they were there. Layers of asphalt accumulated during street repairs, burying prisms that no longer served any function. On June 3, 1957, in an engineering survey of Lower Manhattan infrastructure, city planners documented approximately 12,000 individual vault lights still in place across a 20-block area. The survey noted their locations, their general condition, and the structural status of the vaults below. It recommended no action. The vault lights had become historical artifacts even while remaining functional. Buildings above them had changed ownership multiple times. The original businesses that had operated in the vault spaces had closed or relocated decades earlier, yet the prisms remained, doing what they were designed to do, gathering sunlight at street level and refracting it into spaces below. The transition to modern building codes gradually made vault lights obsolete. New construction eliminated basement extensions beyond property lines. Stricter workplace regulations required electric lighting in all occupied spaces. Insurance requirements made it nearly impossible to operate commercial businesses in vault areas. One by one, the basement workspaces were sealed, filled, or converted to utility corridors. The vault lights above them remained in place because removing them required expensive sidewalk reconstruction. It became cheaper to leave them embedded in the pavement, marking spaces that no longer existed or no longer housed human activity. By the 1980s, in cities like New York and Boston, vault lights had become primarily aesthetic features, historical elements that suggested 19th century urbanism, industrial heritage, architectural authenticity. Preservation societies argued for their retention. Property developers incorporated them into renovation projects, sometimes installing replica vault lights in new construction to evoke historical character. The prisms that remained from the original installations became valuable precisely because they were old, not because they served their original illumination purpose. A vault light that still transmitted light to an active basement space was rare enough to be noteworthy. In San Francisco, in March 1994, an earthquake measuring 6.7 on the Richter scale caused widespread sidewalk damage. Many vault lights shattered under the stress, not because they were structurally weak, but because a century of expansion and contraction had created microfractures in the glass that seismic shaking amplified into catastrophic failure. Repair crews removed the broken prisms and, in most cases, replaced them with concrete inserts. Only in designated historic districts were the vault lights restored with new glass. The replacements were manufactured using modern techniques, cast in different furnaces, installed in replicated frames. They looked identical to the originals from above, but transmitted light with different characteristics. Clearer, more uniform, engineered for appearance rather than for the refraction patterns that had once made basement work possible. Today, scattered across older urban cores, the surviving original vault lights continue their function. In Manhattan's Soho district, where many 19th century commercial buildings have been converted to residential and retail use, vault lights appear in sidewalks as regular geometric patterns. Circles, squares, rectangles of thick glass set in iron frames. Most illuminate basement areas that now house storage rooms, mechanical systems, or upscale retail spaces with their own electric lighting. The natural light filtering down through the prisms has become supplementary, decorative, a reminder of different architectural needs. On October 22, 2019, during morning commute hours, a pedestrian paused on Green Street to look down at a vault light beneath her feet. Through the glass, barely visible in the diffused light, she could see a brick ceiling 12 feet below. The ceiling showed marks from where gas pipes had once been mounted, circular stains on the brickwork, bolt holes filled with crumbling mortar. No one works in that space now. The light continues to enter through the prism, to refract against the angled facets, to scatter across the brick in patterns engineered more than a century ago for people who are gone. The pedestrian moved on. The light remained. If you walk those streets today and look down rather than forward, you can still see them. Every 10 feet, sometimes closer, a rhythm of glass embedded in stone, marking the locations of spaces where light was scarce enough to require this elaborate, invisible infrastructure. The prisms gather morning sun, afternoon sun, the changing angles of light across seasons. Time equals 400 milliseconds / and send it all downward to rooms that may be empty, may be renovated, may be filled with wine racks or server racks, or simply stacked boxes. The engineering remains sound. The purpose has been forgotten. Above ground, the city moves on. Below, the light continues its quiet work, refracting through glass that was never meant to be noticed, only to be necessary.